Thank you for having me here. I'm really happy to be here. As you kindly mentioned, I'm Alexa, and I'm representing the MuDA, which is the Museum of Digital Art in Zurich. And for those of you that might not be familiar with us, we actually just started in 2016. So we're a very young museum. We just celebrated our second birthday, which we're very proud of. And also, we got the majority of our funding to open the museum through a crowdfunding campaign. So already this is quite a disruptive or innovative way of thinking about the development of new museums in today's society. So I'm just going to show you the video that we used for the crowdfunding campaign, because I think it gives a really nice overall view about MuDA, what we're trying to accomplish, and our overall vibe.
This is not a pipe. 1. Digital technology seeps into our society, unlike anything before. Connecting people, cutting the middlemen, decentralizing capital and knowledge. It's the zeros and ones, the underlying set of rules that makes all of this work. 2.
These are the founders who came up with the concept.
These two humans have spent the last years laying the groundwork for something called MuDA, the Museum of Digital Art. Is it for profit? No. The MuDA will be an open platform merging science and creativity, a neutral space to reflect on technology's place in our lives. How social are algorithms? How artificial is intelligence? How secure is privacy? How legitimate piracy? How equal information? And what's the minimum wage for robots anyway? A space for discussion, to experiment and reclaim technology for playful and poetic purposes, with no financial or political intentions.
Preparing for contact. Good.
Where will this wonderful place be? Right here, in your screen. And also here, in the center of Europe, in one of Switzerland's oldest high-rise buildings. 3. These two again. They have spent the last years gathering all the permissions and secured the budget to run the museum. The final missing piece now is you. Become a founding member of the Museum of Digital Art, and complete the funding to cover the necessary construction works, to transform the ground floor into a public space complying with all regulations. Your support will kickstart a virtual and physical institute, hosting, documenting and sharing digital arts.
So I think you at least get a little bit of an idea of what we're trying to do. So 30 days and 567 backers later, we came up with the wonderful binary number to raise funds to open our museum. And there we started. And really we kind of have a passion of three things: data, algorithms, and society. So we're really showing algorithmic art. We love programming, we love code. And I think finding our feet the way we did as this museum, you know, we don't really have, let's say, the same pressures as other institutions. We don't really have a lot of precedents that we need to follow. So what we find is that we really have this space to question what kind of museum we want to be, to question current museum practices and what we wanted to play with, what we wanted to disrupt, new museum practices that maybe we wanted to come up with and try. So what we find is we're constantly doing this as a new museum, and that I guess you could see we're constantly prototyping. And because we are a new museum, because we're a small team, we're able to develop and challenge practices, and then if they work for us, great, and if they don't, we throw them to the wayside. And we really think that being this kind of dynamic or working in this dynamic way is really beneficial as a new museum. Thank you. And especially for us. So I think today what I'm really going to do is just show you our working prototypes. You know, things that we're really working on, and how we're mixing the digital with the physical. I think that's a really main point of what I'll show you today. Because as we're a digital museum, I think a lot of people expect you come into our museum and you connect to your phone instantly, or you're walking around with maybe VR glasses or with a tablet, and that's not always the case. So really, when we were even questioning what kind of museum we want to be, and then being a digital museum on top of that, we're constantly asking, should we use a digital element in this sense or in this practice? Should we use the human or the physical? And we really think that this is an important question to ask, not only showing this kind of art, but also being a museum today, thinking about how to engage with the digital and making sure that you're using it, which we've talked about at this conference, using it in the most relevant ways. So I think you'll see that that question that we're continuously asking in all the examples I'll show you today, but also this idea of the collective. The museum, we really don't have a hierarchy. So although I'm a curator, all of us have different backgrounds at the museum, we really all work together on kind of everything, from the development of the exhibitions to developing our text, our programming, our communications, our everything. And in this way, this kind of collective way of working, we also really find beneficial in engaging with our audiences. And also in that collective conversation is the artists invited, and as well as the audience. So we really also are playing with this idea. So the first thing MuDA wanted to question when we opened was, how do we want to develop our exhibitions? How are artists chosen today? What are current practices with developing exhibitions? And I think, even myself, before I came to MuDA, I always like to consider myself an open-minded curator. But even as I'm researching certain artists or going to my various sources or, researching artists for exhibitions, you always have this unconscious kind of thing going on where if you hear, they were just in a biennale, or so-and-so represents them, you kind of have this, collective point system happening even if you don't want to. So MuDA thought, could we use an algorithm, or could we use a digital element to kind of get away from these biases? Could we start showing artists in a more democratic way? Could we really fluctuate? Could we show well-known artists alongside artists that are really underground and no one's talking about them at all? And we really thought, we think we could by using programmed elements. So in saying that, our main curator is Hal 101. So it's the main curator of the exhibition. And Hal is actually a crawler bot, just to be a little bit more specific. And for those of you that maybe aren't familiar with a crawler bot, it's a web crawler, sometimes called a spider, which is an internet bot that's browsing the web and pretty much web indexing. And although we've obviously programmed Hal with certain parameters, none of those parameters have anything to do with race, age, gender, again, how many biennales they've been in, the state of their career, any financial situations. Hal's really looking or searching through the internet in a really basic way, suggesting artists, and pretty much what he does, or it does, is it develops a list on our server, and he's also as he's searching the web, creating a point system for things that we're looking for as an institution. And then constantly we have this list on our server that's fluctuating 24 hours a day. And it's really interesting. You can kind of see certain names stay at the top and then go down, or like somebody come out of nowhere. And Hal is really searching the internet 24 hours a day to suggest artists for us to show. And why we also find this interesting is also, which us humans really can't do, is the scope of his search, or the scope of its research. Because as myself, again, as a curator, maybe I'm going to specific exhibitions, or I'm going to, I have my sources of where I'm finding artists, where I'm finding content. But Hal's reach is really phenomenal. Hal is searching through internet, or through web pages that are maybe from art communities or, creative applications, but then it's also searching through a blogger who maybe is in their grandmother's basement in the middle of nowhere, blogging about an artist that they just found out about, or a young artist trying to get their artwork out there. So what's really great is HAL doesn't judge its resources or doesn't judge its sources. And we really find that this is really an important aspect of curating that we're able to open up through using an algorithm to do so. And the other interesting thing is I think when we think that HAL's searching through the web 24 hours a day, we're imagining ourselves searching through the web. But what we really have to remember is when HAL searches through the web, he's searching through this, you know, and so really it's very hard for him to be biased or to be judgmental on the artist that it's looking for. So in this sense, MuDA is really happy with using this algorithm to suggest artists for us because we find that it really creates quite a diverse exhibition program every year, or so far the 2 years that we've been open. And then so pretty much what happens, just to give you a little bit of process, you know, whenever we are thinking about our next exhibitions, we go to our server and we see what HAL has suggested. And then we discuss. And this is, in our discussions, everybody, our interns, production, education, communications, and we're all discussing these artists and what we find interesting. And then we pretty much email the artist, say, yeah, we're interested in showing your work, tell them where the MuDA is at, and then we bring the artist into this collective discussion, and then all together we work on developing each exhibition. And the other interesting thing is that the artist in this method is also really pushed to the forward again, you know, because there's not really this overall curatorial theme. It's really just about the artist and their work. So the artist actually gets to first propose different works that they want to exhibit. We give them a fuller plan of the MuDA, but then there's this really constant back and forth in this, again, this collective way of building up the exhibition, and this also includes the exhibition text, our programming alongside, I mean, everything. And the other idea that we find really nice with this collective way of working is that we think that, and with everybody in the MuDA having such different backgrounds, you know, and even our interns who are fluctuating constantly, this is a really good representation of the average audience. So even when we're thinking, let's say, about museum text, you know, let's say myself, I'm thinking about more curatorial text, you know, how I've been trained to write about art. But maybe, you know, my colleague who's a bit more IT-based, you know, he's thinking more, yes, but we need to talk about the programs and the hardware and the code. And then you have, you know, we're all really contributing, thinking, okay, but how do we talk to everybody? And so again, this collective way of working, we really, you know, you'll have to check out the text that accompanies our exhibition because we really try to find this nice balance where everybody gets it. And then if it needs to be unpacked later a little bit more, then there's other avenues to do so. And this is just us working hard. Again, we're a small team, so we really have worked hard on developing our exhibitions. And then I just wanted to show you an example of the diversity of the few of the exhibitions that we've shown. So the first is Ginson Venetti. And they actually took pretty much everyday objects that we're used to seeing in our society, actually very mundane objects, and reprogrammed or hacked into them to make us see them in a new light. And actually, the biggest work was actually called HB Flap, where they actually took the timetable in Zurich's main station, which was going to become digital, and the artist found that out, and that we actually got this physical timetable at auction for £1. And the artists went in and completely rehacked it or reprogrammed it for us to see really this more poetic side to this quite usual functional object. So that's Ginson Venetti. And then you had Lab 212, which really had this beautiful way of, through programming objects, you're really able to see this balance between the digital and the physical. And this was a very interactive exhibition so that the audience, you had to be a participant. Like the artworks didn't come to life unless you engaged with them. So this is just, and you could even fly into space. And always our exhibitions, again, always mix the physical and the digital. There's never just screens, and there's never just, well, if there is physical objects, they're usually programmed in some way, but we also find that this is really important when trying to put out this medium. And then you have QBB, who actually did a wonderful work called Hello World, which actually was, he uses Flash, and he actually created an algorithm to create these visuals. but then created an AI to constantly hack into this algorithm. So this work during the whole of our exhibition was alive, because you never knew, and even the artists didn't know what visuals you would get, what images, and And it really was a beautiful piece of work to see. And I mean, you could really stay in the room for hours because, again, the work was truly alive. It was and it took him 10 years to develop this work. And QBB is a really interesting example of an artist who is very underground. I mean, some of you who are in this kind of art might know him, and he influenced many artists, but really, in terms of being in the public eye, has not. And this is really, again, where the algorithm choosing this kind of artist really helps, we think, with getting, this kind of work out there. And then another example, this is more our digital and architecture, but this is Gramazio Kohler, who even showed us the beauty of robotics by able to levitate, yeah, you can see levitate a very small particle by using sound waves. And this was also another really beautiful, beautiful work. But as you can see, every exhibition is really different. So again, where we found that using an algorithm as a curator, it works for us. So another area is our user experience and audience engagement. So as we talked about a lot during this conference, we're all trying to get to know our audience, right? And at the end of the day, I think what we all have to remember is that, or what we really consider is that everybody is different. Each person comes in with their own set of engagement, their own ideas, their own willingness or not to engage with art. And also with us, we find we're not only combating the normal just audience engaging with art, but then also we're doing digital art, which is kind of even another step, above it, because what we find is society still has a little bit of angst with the digital. It's still, am I using my phone too much? Are my kids using it too much? Do I not know how it works? Is it going to take over my job? Oh, and now digital art, okay, So we really realize that we have to even go a little bit further to reach as many audiences as we want. And then this is where this collective consciousness really comes in handy, because all of us know everything from A to Z about the museum, that we all in our head could really tell you anything that you wanted to know about anything. So when we thought about the visitor coming to the museum, like I said before, we wondered, do we want your first experience to be a digital experience? And actually, our answer is no. We thought that your first experience at the Museum of Digital Art is actually a very human one. So when you come to the museum, you're actually greeted very friendly by a person asking if you've ever been there, asking if you, what you know about digital art, really already starting to engage in conversation and to kind of break down or just have this more human-to-human approach. And then from that point on, and depending how many people are at the museum, you're offered a tour. And then each tour that all of us give in the museum constantly changes. So, you could be coming from an IT background and you're asking us a lot, what programs are they using? What is the hardware? What have you? And we can answer those kinds of questions. Or you could be coming from the average Joe who just is kind of getting into art and is just here to experience something new. So every tour really changes. And what we noticed that really lets down this guard, and this comfortability opens up, which then leads to further engagement. And so for us as a museum, we find that this bringing back this really human, personal approach really helps us, because we have people stay. I mean, we're a very small museum, 400 square meters, but we have people stay for hours and hours, and we really find that is because they feel comfortable. They want to engage. They ask more questions. They go into our library and read. They have a coffee, and for us, we find this really works. The other element is we also give you a newspaper as a guide. Again, another physical object, and quite, again, developed with the artist and very good design. But then the audience actually feels, I have this physical object, because it's not really just an A4 piece of paper, and it's not your typical brochure. It's actually this beautifully designed objects which they take care of. I mean, most people who come to the museum actually collect them. And we find that this also, instead of maybe being distracted on your phone while walking and then also experiencing digital art, kind of having this physical object actually grounds them a bit and then opens them up to this next digital experience. But then when thinking about our exhibition catalogs, we thought, well, yeah, I mean, to really show this kind of dynamic art and the dynamic environment that we exist in, maybe this is when digital is more effective. So actually, all of our exhibition catalogs are apps. And then that's also developed with each artist, and we even think is more a further extension of the artist's work, because every app or every catalog is very different and usually has something that you have to engage with your body, which also represents the exhibition and their practice. So again, we really feel that using digital in this sense really gets you closer to the artist and the work, and also you're able to see it in context. So this is just an example of one of our catalogs. So it always at first tells you how to engage with it. Oh, sorry. And then in this situation, the artists really love potato chips, so they wanted this potato chip background, which actually you can click on and eat as you're going through their catalog, which you just heard. And then pretty much after the credits, we always have to be loyal to our supporters, you'll start to see different images or different icons. And then by clicking on each, it'll take you to a new artwork, an artist interview, information more about the exhibition, about their practice. So again, really this more dynamic catalog that also continues to interact with the audience. And then this is just a small example just to show how you would use it on your phone. And what we feel nice too is like, the artists, you have the artists themselves telling you about their work, and this is really only able to do this using video and digital element. And also with this kind of work, it's really important to see it in context. I think using a flat image would never do it justice, So for us, this is also very important when showing this kind of work.
80 slides.
The other one is Lab 212, just an example, just to show you the different vibes of the two apps. Because our exhibition had a lot to do with moving the hands and the body, so this is. And the idea was that you had to kind of move the hands in different ways, and then you had to, well, we had already done it, but at the beginning there was just blank spaces, and then once you made this certain hand movement, then you would be rewarded and then brought into a new artwork, or again, artist interview, or what have you. So just an example of one of their works. Enthusiastic overlay.
Alors, Enthusiast Overlay, c'est une installation interactive composée de 12 balles en suspension et d'un écran de vidéo retransmission.
So that's just an example, and again, an example how you would engage with it at home. So yeah, a very playful way, but again, getting you closer to the work, to the artist, and to the continuing experience of the exhibition. And the other thing that we find really important, and the last thing, is about education. So being a digital museum, again, what I told you with the normal kind of walls that we're dealing with, we thought, how can we expect people to really engage with digital art if half of them are, well, everybody is users, but a lot of people aren't really understanding what they're using, how they're using, and again, usually knowledge creates more comfortability and more excitement with anything that you're engaging with. So as a normal museum, we're doing artist talks, talks about new innovation, but then we're also doing digital performance, and we're doing sound, and we're having talks about things that are really important to our community, like net neutrality. That was a huge talk. Or we're engaging with artists, such as Fragmentine, who is kind of looking at 1,001 square meters around the MuDA and using data to explore just our local community, but then also helping participants to also maybe do artistic interventions or use that data to expose the community better to those of us that are really just passing by every day. So again, we're very engaged in our local community. And then we do workshops for people who already have a little bit of an IT background. So this one was generative design, how to further design principles using algorithms, or for newbies who we teach, let's teach you how to develop a moisture sensor for your plants. So again, really just trying to have as much activation at the museum as possible to get as many different audience members in. And then, of course, the most important is the children, and I think what the MuDA really realized is we have children nowadays, they're the children of technology, and they're using technology, some of them from their 2. And, but then again, the school systems aren't really caught up yet, or what we're noticing in Switzerland, teaching kids about technology, how it works, what it is, how they can create with it, how they can make something with it. So for us, we thought, it's really easy for kids to engage in the digital. Not a problem. They're our biggest art fans, actually. But we want to empower them. We want to show them that they can be the next creators, that they can be the future, that they can create and not just be a user of technology. So what we do is we have open labs every Sunday, 2 hours, and they're actually free to kids starting at 4 years old. And always our library in the room, it's made up of numerous activities that kids can engage with. So it's starting from physical computation, which could be learning about pixels, learning about binary numbers by making a necklace with your name, with beads, learning about very physical computing concepts, learning how to program with blocks, learning about electricity with fruits. But then we're also looking at electronics, teaching kids how to solder, teaching kids how to do circuit boards. One activity that I love is we always take old electronics and open it up and show them what's inside. I mean, they love this. But then also taking, we have this one workshop where they take their old toys like electronic toys that don't work anymore, and we fix them with the kids. This blows their mind. I could fix my toy, and not just throw it away. I mean, this is really a step that the MuDA feels that we need to go. And also with the toys, I mean, one kid, he fixed his toy car, but then he actually added on sensors to make the car do even something else. So, I mean, again, really empowering the kids to show, what's possible. And then obviously we're teaching them about programming. So very early on, how to code. We use processing a lot, using music, how to make their own 8-bit music. This is very popular. But these workshops are going on continuously at the MuDA. I mean, like I said, we have Kibit, which is our open lab, but then we also have more structured workshops that usually have a start and a finish. So again, kind of learning through chaos and play, but then paired with a structured start-finish goal mentality. And then also, like I said, probably similar to bigger institutions where we're able to be very flexible, the same with the school system in Switzerland. I mean, teachers yet aren't really, they're using technology in their classrooms, but they're not teaching their kids about technology. So we're even doing workshops for teachers, how to teach them to bring it back to the classroom, how to also teach them how to develop curriculum with their already taught subjects. And then the other thing is also when we're thinking about our museum shop. We could sell books and our catalog and everything, but how could we even engage with the visitor more? So this is currently ongoing. We actually developed a algorithm with an interface, so visitors can come in and they can actually engage with the program, and it's kind of like a game, but depending on what you do, every image is different. And then we hacked a sewing machine or embroidery machine, so then the visitor can come, kind of engage with the program, and then actually make their own MuDA t-shirt. So this is really something that we're finding working really well. And again, further including of the audience, further engagement, and making them have fun, making them learn, making them engage. And then also, like I'm wearing, we also collaborated with Switzerland's last industrial knitting mill and developed an algorithm with their machines and created these glitchy algorithmic sweatshirts. And the last thing is MuDA loves to collaborate. So also being a small institution, we find that collaboration is so important, but actually even if you're a big institution, you know, this is how we really engage in more audiences, or this is what we're finding, this is how we combine efforts, and this is how we, yeah, I mean, depending, at the heart of MuDA is really to engage and for people to create knowledge. So we're collaborating with local hackerspaces, to universities, to institutions, to events. I mean, we're really collaborating as much as possible. So for an example, we collaborated with ETH, which is a university in Zurich. They did this very cool robotic pavilion for the Design Biennale, and then we filled it with computational learning as our MuDA style. So this was really a beautiful collaboration of this outdoor pavilion, and then inside all this physical and digital computational learning. We also collaborated with other institutions like House Constructive and Museumix to develop a camp for kids during the holidays, so how to, again, further teach them about technology. And even with local musicians, and we came up with Zurich's first modular festival, which we have at the MuDA and is now going on its second year. So yeah, so that's really, again, I hope this was helpful, but just to show you, as a new museum, how we're really thinking and challenging and being dynamic, but also being malleable, not being scared to fail, but continuing to move forward. And what we're finding is what we're doing is working. We really have loyal audiences that continue to grow, and we are constantly busy and a little bit crazy, but it's working. And yeah, I hope that that when you're in Zurich, you're able to visit the MuDA or obviously engage with us online. So thank you.